Life can be tough sometimes. We all have our struggles and challenges. We often find ourselves facing a multitude of problems, whether it's stress from work, relationship issues, or financial struggles. It can be overwhelming at times and it can be difficult to deal with them on our own. But what if I told you there was a way to lighten the road, to find comfort and solace even in the darkest of times? Job was a man who had everything: a loving family, wealth, and a good health. However, in a short period of time, he lost everything he had, including his children, his possessions, and his health. His friends, even his wife, suggested that he curse God and die. Despite his difficult circumstances, Job turned to God and poured out his heart to him. He expressed his confusion and despair, but also his faith and trust in God. In Job 13:15, he says, "Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him." God eventually restored Job's fortunes and blessed him with even greater abundance than before. Through his suffering, Job learned important lessons about the sovereignty and goodness of God. This story shows that we can take all our problems and concerns to God, even when we don't understand why we are going through difficult times. God is always there to comfort us, guide us, and provide for us. We can trust in His wisdom and goodness even when things seem hopeless. In Psalm 55, David laments about his enemies and the betrayal of a close friend. He writes, "My heart is in anguish within me. The terror of death have fallen on me. Fear and trembling has beset me. Horror has overwhelmed me." Despite his distress, David turns to God for help. He says, "But I call to God, and my Lord saves me. Every morning and noon I cry out in distress, and He hears my voice." David expresses his trust in God's ability to handle his problem and bring justice. He writes, "Cast your cares on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken." This story shows us that we can take all our problems and concerns to God in prayer. He is always ready to listen and provide comfort, strength, and guidance. We can trust in God's ability to handle our problems and working all things for our good. In the Bible, the word "first" has a significance. It teaches us to prioritize seeking God's help first when we encounter problems in our lives. Instead of turning to alcohol, drugs, or denying our struggles, we are encouraged to take our problems to Christ. He advises us to seek His kingdom and righteousness, and then everything else will follow suit. If you want to avoid a month of heartaches, take this advice and turn to God the moment a problem arises. Instead of venting to friends and family or trying to solve the issue on your own, go to God first. Seek His guidance and trust that He will provide solutions to your problems. As God's people put Him first, blessing begins to flow. Keep first thing first and watch as everything else falls into place. Remember, seeking God first doesn't guarantee a life without problems, but it does promise that we won't have to face them alone. To make the most out of our lives, we must actively seek God's direction. His strategies are superior to ours. As the prophet Isaiah said, His ways are higher than my ways, His thoughts are higher than my thoughts. Therefore, it's crucial to ask Him for the guidance through prayers. We must acknowledge that our plans might not always be the best. Instead, we must seek God's wisdom to prevail in our lives. That's why we should make it a habit to pray and communicate with God regularly. When we seek His direction, we allow His Spirit to give us wisdom, which we cannot obtain through our own impulses or gut instinct. Therefore, we must prioritize seeking God's direction through prayers to make the most out of our lives and fulfill our purpose. Sometimes we make the mistake of going to God with a preconceived plan, assuming we know what's best for our lives. We then ask God to bless our plans, even if they are not in the line with His will. But God may not want to bless something that He did not ordain in our lives. He may have a better plan for us that we are not aware of. God wants to help us, but He's not just here to give us what we want. He wants to guide us towards His perfect will. As Psalm 32 says, I will guide you along the best pathway of your life. We should be grateful that God has a best pathway for our lives, but we must seek His direction. We must be willing to surrender our plans and seek God's direction to fulfill our purpose. We must trust that His ways are better than ours and that He knows what's best for us. When we seek His direction, we allow Him to guide us towards the best pathway of our lives, which may be different from what we initially planned. However, there may be times when our actions are not in obedience to God's will. This may happen because we want to do something else, and what God is asking us to do does not align with our plans or desires. In such situations, our actions may be inconsistent with our beliefs. To overcome this, we need to develop the right habits. Habits are powerful and can create our future. We must cultivate the habit of seeking God's direction in everything we do. We must also develop the habit of obedience to His will, even if it goes against our plans and desires. By developing the right habits and seeking God's direction, we can align our actions with our beliefs and fulfill our purpose. We can trust that God's plan for our lives is perfect and that His ways are higher than ours. When faced with tests and challenges from all directions, it becomes clear whether our faith is genuine or not. We should not try to escape these difficulties prematurely, but instead allow them to do their work so that we may become mature and well developed, lacking in nothing. If we don't give up on God, then through faithful obedience and patience, we will emerge stronger and more mature than ever before. Our relationships, including our marriages, will be better than ever before. And we will lack nothing we need in life if we don't give up when things get tough. I am going to trust God, and God is going to bring a breakthrough. You know how you are going to get through the attack you are facing? You know how you are going to get through the trials and the tribulation that you feel like you are facing today? You are only going to be able to get through. There is one being who has the power to solve all our problems, big or small. All we have to do is take our problem to Him first. People have been turning to God for centuries, seeking guidance and support when they need it the most. And while The way we worship may have changed. The power of prayers remains as strong as ever.